Hi everyone, and welcome to the next video in this series on characters in Shakespeare's Macbeth. We're going to examine the character of Macduff in this video, and we're going to look at some ways that we can understand him. I'm going to give you some ideas that you can use in your essays if you're writing about Macduff, so that you can show critical literacy and a really sophisticated understanding of the play. One way of understanding the character of Macduff is, similarly to Banquo, as a foil for Macbeth. If we consider that Macbeth turns his back through selfish greed on the established system and traditions of his country by killing the king and claiming the crown for himself, then Macduff does the complete opposite. He sacrifices everything he has, his wife, his children, his castle, to restore the rightful heir to the throne and restore balance and equilibrium in his country. Through Macduff, the audience sees the correct choices and actions that should be taken by a good subject. If we recall that Shakespeare was a supporter of royal power and the existing system, it's clear then that Macduff, who is the most outspoken in terms of his desire for revenge, is to be seen as a sort of hero himself. He sacrifices his family not to become king himself, but simply to restore the correct authority in his country. He is a pure traditionalist and as close to the perfect nobleman as you could get. When Macduff travels to England in Act 4, Scene 3 to meet with Malcolm to get his support to remove Macbeth from the throne, he reveals his deep concern about his country and the way it's going. Speaking to Malcolm, he says, "Bleed, bleed, poor country." And later he says, "O Scotland, Scotland." It's clear that Macduff's loyalties lie with his nation, just as Macbeth's seemed to at the beginning of the play, before selfish ambition took over. Macduff, too, isn't willing to sacrifice his country simply to give Malcolm the throne either. When Malcolm, in an effort to test Macduff, lists all of his vices, Macduff is willing to overlook his desire for women and riches, but when Malcolm says that if he had power he would pour the sweet milk of concord into hell and confound all unity on earth, Macduff says not only is Malcolm not fit to govern, he's not fit to live. In this scene then, Shakespeare presents the audience with the ideal version of the royal subject. He is willing to sacrifice all that he has to maintain the system, but ultimately loyalty to his nation is his number one priority. Macduff's dedication and commitment to his country and his real king makes Macbeth's disregard of it stand out all the more. When Macbeth and Lady Macbeth carry out their deeds, they repeatedly call on heaven to look away or for light to be put out so they can't be seen. It's an acknowledgement that what they are doing is wrong. There can be few things worse than regicide, the killing of a king. When Macduff is informed in Act 4, Scene 3 that his family have been slaughtered by the tyrant, he swears revenge. Interestingly, he invokes heaven as well, and he brings the idea of God and heaven into his quest. He says, "Gentle heavens, cut short all intermission. Front to front bring thou this fiend of Scotland and myself. Within my sword's length set him. If he scape, heaven forgive him too." Here Macduff is secure in the knowledge that his desire for revenge is righteous. He asks gentle heaven to bring Macbeth before his sword so he can deal with him. Malcolm too invokes heaven when he responds to Macduff, telling him Macbeth is ripe for the shaking, and the powers above put on their instruments. The suggestion here is that they are righteous and that theirs is somehow a holy war against the tyrant Macbeth. Macduff and Malcolm are on the side of God and heaven. All of this confirms the idea that Macduff is an idealized version of the royal subject, deployed or used to expose and highlight Macbeth's worst traits and excesses. It's no coincidence then, at the end of the play, that it is Macduff who kills Macbeth. If Macduff is the perfect subject and Macbeth is to be viewed as an example of selfish ambition, then Shakespeare makes a very obvious claim for tradition and upholding the system through the last interaction between these two characters in Act 5, Scene 8. Macbeth at first is reluctant to fight Macduff because he feels that his soul is too much charged with Macduff family blood, a reference to the slaughter of Macduff's family earlier. But Macduff, following the lead of Lady Macbeth, calls him a coward in order to bait him into doing something he said he didn't want to. And it works. Macbeth, in his last few lines, says, "I will not yield to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet." As a good subject, he should be more than willing to kiss the ground before the king's feet. Macduff re-enters in the next scene, carrying Macbeth's head, and announces that now the time is free, and hails Malcolm as King of Scotland. Shakespeare does something quite interesting here. The fact is that despite Macbeth's actions, he's still king. He was still crowned king at Scone, and as such, Macduff has committed regicide, the same crime that Macbeth did. But the audience and Macduff himself are protected from this by Macbeth's extreme actions in murdering Macduff's entire family. It is clear then that Macbeth and Macduff are broadly similar characters. They are both noble lords. It is clear then that Macbeth and Macduff are broadly similar characters. They are both noble lords, they both have outspoken wives, and they both take fate into their own hands. Macbeth to claim the crown, and Macduff travelling to England to restore the rightful heir. Macbeth's actions are all prompted by selfishness and greed and personal ambition, whereas Macduff's actions are prompted by his love for his country and the rightful king. Macduff then shows up Macbeth to be lacking in loyalty and traditional values. I hope that you found this video useful, and if you have, please subscribe to the channel, like and leave a comment, and don't forget to check back soon for some more Macbeth content and also content on other areas of the Leaving Cert course.